Good evening, everyone. I call the Town of Ayer Select Board to order for Tuesday, December 19th, 2023. This meeting/hearing of the Ayer Select Board will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting/hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom and Channel 8. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom meeting ID number 897-9080-0793 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager at ATM at air.ma.us or 978-772-8220 extension 100 prior to the meeting. Ask everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any changes to the agenda for this evening?
I have nothing.
I don't have anything.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second?
All right. We do have, Sean Copeland is remote on Zoom, so we'll be roll calling the vote. Ms. Livingston?
Aye.
Mr. Copeland?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. There are no announcements this evening. So I'll open it up to public input if anyone is here for public input. Pauline?
Good evening, all. I just want to say thank you to all of the three of you, as well as Dan Benchwalik, for all the efforts you've done to improve the crosswalk at Adams Street and Central Ave. It's been great, and although I still can't cross in the dark, it's fine, but the improvements have been really stellar, and I can't thank you enough for jumping on that.
All right.
Awesome.
Excellent. You're very welcome. Glad we could help out. Glad Dan could help out. All right. Speaking of Dan, we have Dan next item on the agenda. Dan Van Schalkwyk, Director, Department of Public Works.
Yeah.
Evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. All right, so 2 items on the DPW report. The first is a change order. So this is the final change order. This is for the 3rd Street Water and Drain project. And the project's complete, and at the very end, we do a balance of the estimated quantities that were bid versus the actual installed. And so that the change order includes some overruns there, but it also includes some disposal of asbestos cement pipe that was unforeseen out there. So there's some costs associated with that. The change orders for the amount of $39,931.81, and this is for the final change order number 2 for the project. So I recommend signature by the chair. So,
All right. It says also includes a time extension. How much are we extending that by?
yeah. So let me double check.
Sorry, I didn't read the legal document. I apologize.
No. I think it was 2.5 months about is what the extension was. So the substantial completion was originally in August, but we did add some drainage work there. And so there was some, and unforeseen, so it was reasonable that they got it done. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions, Sean or Janice?
I have none.
I have none. Okay. I'll make a motion that the board approve the change order number 2 in the amount of $39,931.81 for the 3rd Street Water and Drainage Improvement Project. For signature by the board, or by the chair.
Seconded.
All right. Roll call the vote. Mr. Copeland?
Aye.
Ms. Livingston?
Aye.
And chair says aye, it's approved.
Okay, the second item through you, Mr. Chair, is a monthly water supply update. And so for that item, it's included in the memo, a summary of how the system was responding over the last month. And so there was, typical little rest time during the week. The tank slowly drains as we're trying to keep up with demand. However, there was a few weekends where the Grove Pond facility had nearly a day of rest, so, it seemed like we're getting into that winter demand pattern, so so there's less demand at this time. So with the winter demand pattern in place and outdoor watering not occurring at this time, we do recommend an adjustment to the current state of water supply conservation, just to lift the mandatory outdoor water ban, because it's not really practical at this time in the winter months, and then we'll revisit when we get to the springtime. So in the memo, you'll notice a motion to maintain the declaration of state of water supply conservation because we're having trouble meeting the demand, but at this time we could lift the mandatory ban on outdoor water use.
Okay,
because of
I'm
practicability.
assuming we'll revisit that in the spring.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we would revisit and.
Excellent.
So, and then just, if I can, just as a reminder, there was an example notice I put into the packet as well. And just a reminder as to why we're doing this, it's because of the struggles at the Grove Pond Water Treatment Plant. There's an unanticipated restriction that was caused by the PFAS treatment that was installed there. And so right now, we're not able to pump nearly as much as we used to from the plant. But once the Clear Well project moves forward, we should be able to pump at or near the previous capacity. So that's our issue really causing this. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board?
I have none.
Okay.
I have none.
I'll make a motion that the board maintain the declaration of a state of water supply conservation and lift the current mandatory ban on outdoor water use.
I'll second that.
Roll call the vote. Ms. Livingston?
Aye.
Mr. Copeland?
Aye.
And the chair says aye.
Okay. That's all I have. Want me to stick around for?
Yeah, for the next one, which is the transfer station operational financial analysis study and funding recommendation. I'm assuming that's you too?
Yeah, you want me to? Sure. So Robert put together a good memo and it's included in the packet. But in summary, the rate review committee met, was it last week?
Last week.
Last week, and we discussed, we have 3 proposals now. We've received one from Arcadis previously, one from Weston and Sampson previously, and a new proposal from Ty and Bond. And after reviewing those 3 as a group, the committee really felt that Ty and Bond was the most advantageous to move forward with. The Arcadis proposal didn't really speak to the operations and efficiencies there. There was really just more of a financial look at the station.
So they're the ones in Florida, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
so getting them to do like a site review was going to be a little
Yeah,
difficult.
it's a little.
Yeah, so they didn't really, that one was automatically pretty much a no. And then the Weston and Sampson Time Bond, they were similar, but the Tie and Bond, it really looked like they put the effort, had site-specific ideas of what to look at and how to do. And they're also going to put together a financial model. And it was a little less expensive than the Weston and Sampson. So in Robert's memo, he identified that the proposed price for the Time Bond proposal is $18,500. So the committee did vote to recommend to the select board request up to $20,000 from ARPA, just to have a small contingency in there if it becomes necessary. But any unused funds would go back to the ARPA pool. So that's where the committee landed. The time bond proposal was voted to move forward with as a recommendation, and also recommending $20,000 from ARPA from the board to do the study.
All right, excellent.
Anything else?
Any questions?
I have none.
Oh, yeah. You were involved early, sorry. Sean, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
No. I don't have any other questions also. I know we're overdue. Robert, please.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to stress for the record, as all along, that this operational and financial study is not looking at the issue of curbside. It's just so we're
thank you.
clear that this study does not look at that.
I'll make a motion that the board,
Oh, sorry, I have one question in the audience. Lori?
I've been reading about this, and I think it's great that we're going to engage in these tasks. Will the company, Tig and Bond, give any help with promoting the great prices that happen, that people can take advantage of at the transfer station, or all of the variety of materials that can be recycled there, such that I'm reading saying costs will be increased proportionally. Well, maybe they could be increased a little bit less if more people took advantage of the important services that we provide there, rather than using the private haulers, usually of which cost a lot more and are sometimes inconvenient.
So this proposal is really to just look at the efficiencies at the transfer station. Look at the amount of hours and how it's being worked up there, and look at the, is it better to continue to have the pricey bags or go back to a sticker? It's all about the operations and efficiencies. Now, with hope, with the report coming back, maybe it'll be such a good report, and whatever tweaks need to be made, which of course the rate review committee would be talking about, and then it would be brought forward and everything before any decision would be made, that would also help with the promotion of, maybe people should look at the transfer station more than they would at curbside. But again, like he mentioned, I mean, it's not addressing curbside at all.
I know that.
Yeah, so, but it's not for promotion purposes. It's literally because we need to look at, are the hours really efficient? Is the work being done up there, is it being done efficiently? How can we better do things and provide a better service?
And I'll offer this. I think what you're looking for is something. You're right. So I think what you're looking for, something we've talked about for years, is how do we promote it? How do we market this? And that would definitely factor in when they're going to provide a model, because I think there's three options of what they're looking to propose. One is full funding, a set subsidized funding, and I can't remember what the third one is. Modified. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think this study gives us that opportunity to kind of look at the proposals that they make for the operations itself, also looking at the model to try to find something more efficient, where maybe we can get the prices down in a way where that's part of how we can market it. From how do we actually physically do the marketing? I mean, I think we would need some other help for that.
It really, the marketing of the transfer station really comes to word of mouth. I mean, it's a generational thing. It's people have told us they don't want to put the diapers in the back of their car to go to the transfer station. And that's still the case. So, but that's not the purpose of this study. Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't think we need to get into the pros and cons of a marketing plan now. I'm just suggesting that maybe that could be an outgrowth of this. Two other questions just really quickly. Will the meetings that they're going to have include residents at all, people that use the transfer station?
They will be visiting at the rate review committee meeting, and I know they want to go before they start the process, when they're doing the data gathering portion, they'll come to the committee, and then at the end, when they have their recommendations, also come to the rate review committee. So through that, residents could attend and participate. I don't recall the other meetings. Data validation kickoff, those would probably be
It says they're
internal.
going to have a site visit to observe operations and customer activity. So hopefully they'll ask questions of the people that are there at the time.
Right.
And finally, I see the schedule is starting soon. And I'm sorry that I didn't read this totally, but when's it going to be final? Do you know how long the project is going to take?
They estimated about 3 months in their proposal, so that's probably about right when you factor in the meetings and the timing of all that. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions, Sean?
No.
Okay. Excellent.
All right, so I'll make a motion that the board approve the study cost of up to $20,000 from ARPA funds for the transfer station study.
I'll second. Roll call the vote. Ms. Livingston,
Aye.
Mr. Copeland,
Aye.
and the chair says aye. Excellent. Thank you, Dan.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Moving on to the town manager's report. Mr. Pompriano, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. And I'll sort of put the administrative update in the second item, the budget process update, together in my report. So first, I'd like to just thank the Ayer Police Chief and the Ayer Fire Chief and the police and the fire department for escorting Santa this past Sunday through Ayer at the Santa visited, and I know he'll be back on the 25th, but a special thanks to the chiefs and the departments. The winter town newsletter, which we've been doing quarterly, is out. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. It has a lot of great information as we move this project forward. A special thanks to the town clerk's office for taking the lead on that. I did do a little section for this edition about the budget process. The Senior Center Building Committee had its meeting on December 7th, as the committee has started its initial investigation of all potential public town-owned land potentially for a senior center. They started that process, and they have another meeting in January scheduled. Also, it was announced that a grant in the amount of $300,000 has been secured for design and due diligence efforts. So that process continues to move forward. On the budget front, as I mentioned, all departmental budgets are due December 29th. Draft one of the budget, per the budget calendar, will be sent to the Select Board and the Finance Committee, and at that time will also be available to the public on January 12th. Wednesday, January 24th at 6 will be the first public budget forum. And we want to also just continue to mention that all information and documents related to the FY25 budget and budget process are going to be put on the budget webpage on the town's website. And also, if anybody has requests or questions, to let my office know, or to request any hard copies during normal business hours, we want individuals to have that information. So it's sort of all things budget. As you know, Mr. Chairman, the Capital Planning Committee met last week and got through pretty much the lion's share of potential recommendations, and will be meeting again. Rate review, obviously tonight we'll move forward with this analysis for the transfer station, and then we'll be shifting to looking at water and sewer rate recommendations as we move forward. So again, it's sort of all things budget. So related to that, my third item in your packet is the final review and approval of the update of the town's financial policies. And as I mentioned, the town's financial policies are subject to periodic review, usually every 2 years, by the executive board, takes the lead on that review, and then makes any update recommendations to the Select Board and the Finance Committee for both boards' approvals. And on November 30th, the board voted unanimously to recommend this update of the town's financial policies. It spent the last about 16 months reviewing them. And in the memo, and for the interest of time as well, I just highlighted the major substantive changes. And so, just for the public's benefit, the executive board consists of the chair of the Select Board, the chair of the Finance Committee, the finance manager, the town accountant, the town manager, and the assistant town manager. And through that process, these are the major changes. There's a section codifying the town's budget calendar was added on page 6. A section on the local cannabis tax was added on page 8. So some of these things have happened or have been implemented since the last version, and we needed to update them. There's a section on the Urban Development Action Grant on page 13. A section on reserve fund for future payments of accrued liabilities for compensated balances was added, and that was in accordance with when town meeting passed that. The language regarding debt service expenditures was clarified on page 15, and it was actually duplicated in 2 spots under capital stabilization and this section, so that was cleared up. Perhaps one of the most significant substantive changes was the capital finance threshold was increased, or is recommended to be increased from $300,000 to $500,000 on page 18. So historically, $300,000 was the benchmark. Anything more would activate either a debt or capital exclusion. Since the last time, we found with the increased costs of things and so forth that really there was room to increase that threshold to $500,000. And then in the policy, there used to be the entire town's investment policy, and the investment policy is reviewed annually by the town treasurer with the town's other financial folks, and we were advised by the town's auditors under best practices that the investment policy in its entirety should not be in the town's financial policies, but there is language that refers to it and references to it being on the town's website and also available upon request. And then the procurement requirements sections on page 19 and 20 were just updated to be consistent with any changes in Massachusetts state procurement law. So with that, before the board the select board for any questions, we'd ultimately be looking for your approval and signature. And in talking with the chair of the finance committee, he's planning to convene the finance committee right after the new year. And myself and the finance manager planning to go to their meeting to make a presentation and answer any questions they have, and would be looking for their approval. And then we will revisit them again in another 2 years. So I don't know if there's any questions, Mr. Chair, through you from members of the board.
I don't have any questions, but I will say I want to thank everyone involved, particularly Barbara, who took the lead on this, and Carly, who did a lot of research on a few things also. It's been this review was long overdue, and it did go on for a little bit because I think it was a very comprehensive approach that the BI board took. So thanks to everyone for that. Before I get to Pauline, Sean, or Janice, any questions?
So I just want to make sure, so like the last final edits were in 2014, so at that time, of course, we didn't have a cannabis tax. So this
Correct.
is just making sure it got into the financial policy. So anything that was missing from all those years ago has now been incorporated.
Correct. Yep.
I have no questions.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
Very
Pauline?
thorough.
Did you recognize me, Scott?
Yes, I did, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
No.
I only want to ask, and I realize this is not the final version of this, was any more thought given to including something to do with the TIFs in the financial policies?
So we did discuss that at the BI board meeting, and at the time, we did want to get these approved. So we decided to move on with the financial policies as they are. On the normal cadence, we should be reviewing these every 2 years. So we're going to take a look at the TIF after we get through the budget season, and then we'll take a look at that so we're prepared for the next iteration.
Fair enough, not my preferred choice, but I'll accept that because right now the budget is far more important. But I'll keep following.
All right, thank you,
Thank
Pauline.
you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, any other questions or comments? No? Okay.
So do you need a motion?
We would like a motion to approve them, please.
All right, I'll make a motion that the select board approve the update to the town's financial policies as presented.
Seconded.
All right. Roll call the vote. Ms. Livingston?
Aye.
Mr. Copeland?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
Then, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, on my fourth item is the January 2024 meeting schedule. I just wanted to have a discussion on this. This presents itself every few years. In this case, as the board is aware, the board generally meets the first and third Tuesdays of the month at 6. This year, the way the calendar falls, the first meeting would be on January 2nd, the day after the holiday. And then if you look at the week before, which is next week, with the Christmas holiday and so forth, there's a much shorter posting window, but also historically, there tends to be no matters that require the board's immediate attention or action. And in years that they have been, the board has always, called a meeting within the context of the open meeting law. So as it stands for January 2024, the second meeting, which is January 16th, there's no issue. But wanted to get a sense from the board. January 16th, obviously, is the meeting. There's also the budget forum on the 24th, which is a joint meeting of the Select Board and FinCom, what the board's pleasure about the beginning of the month is.
Okay. I think what you propose is fine. Any concerns from Sean or Janice?
No, I mean, I kind of looked, and historically, we do run into this where we have a couple of years where we're not meeting. If there was an emergency, he would contact us and we would quickly meet, so,
We're available if you need us.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So with that, unless there are any questions from members of the board on any administrative matters, I want to wish you and wish everybody and your families a very Merry Christmas and a happy and healthy New Year, and we look forward to 2024, which is just around the corner. So that concludes my report, unless there's any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Robert. Happy holidays to you too, and to you, Carly. Thanks for all your support over the last year. All right, new item for business, new item on the agenda. New business, select board member questions. Devon's Jurisdiction Framework Committee update from board member Janice Livingston. Ms. Livingston.
Okay, so last Wednesday, the Devon's Jurisdiction Framework Committee met. And the update is that the RFI that we've talked about as far as, we've got to get out so that we can get the consultants and everything is about 80% complete. I wrote everything down so I wouldn't forget anything. The town administrator, Shirley, and our town manager, Robert, are working on this. The purpose of this RFI is to notify the consulting community of an anticipated RFP to the project of creating a study and joint report consistent with Section 23 of Chapter 498 of the Acts of 1993 concerning the permanent government structure for the ongoing operation and administration of the jurisdiction known as the Devon's Regional Enterprise Zone. The DGFC is interested in recommendations related to the proposed scope of services, staffing requirements, timeline not to exceed 18 months, and overall project fee. Once the RFI is completed, it will be posted in ComBuys, posted in Central Register or Goods and Services Bulletin, which is the Secretary of the State, local newspaper for 2 weeks, the DGFC website, and posted in each of the 3 towns, Ayer, Harvard, and Shirley. Once posted, response time is anticipated to be 4 to 6 weeks. So again, the overall objective is that there will be a consultant that will compile all the information so that when the report goes to the state, we're all confident that the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed. So whatever decision the state makes in 2033, it won't be a surprise.
Okay.
Okay. I think the bottom line is the one thing I can tell you for sure in 2033, a change is coming. What it is, don't know yet. Won't know,
Okay.
but a change is coming. Okay. So, all right. So as some of you remember, I informed you months ago about an attempt by Senator Cronin, I want to get credit for saying his name right today, to take Vicksburg Square due to the emergency order made by the governor regarding the housing crisis. As a reminder, Vicksburg Square is not in his jurisdiction, but is in Senator Eldridge's jurisdiction, which is another reason why it failed, because everybody was surprised. Eldridge was like, what are you doing? That's my jurisdiction. He is Shirley's senator, okay? So the bill, of course, was not approved. The DJFC has for a couple years talked about Vicksburg Square. Mass Development in 2019 approached the town saying they were going to bring it back to super town meeting, but then it was just dropped with no explanation. Just poof. Pandemic, here we are again. Of course, part of the problem with Vicksburg Square is that it is located in the historical town lines of Ayer and Harvard. This has been brought up before as being an issue, with many wondering what would happen if the state does indeed return the land to the three towns. So after much discussion, it was decided to create a draft warrant article. The draft warrant article, which was in the packet for the meeting last month, which everything is at the Devon's Jurisdiction Framework Committee's webpage, was created and sent to the stakeholders for review and discussion at last week's meeting. This draft article was not a surprise, but once seeing in writing, one of the paragraphs, while permanent government at Devon's will eventually be determined by the legislator and the governor, it is the choice of the towns that the land and buildings collectively known as Vicksburg Square shall be entirely and permanently within the jurisdiction of the town of Ayer. This, unfortunately, even though it was being discussed, had been mentioned and everything, seeing it in writing, this caused a lot of confusion and stress. The confusion being is that some people thought that, well, if, for example, Devon's became its own town, that Ayer would have Vicksburg Square and there would be like this hole in the middle. So I've clarified all that, and I thought that explained it right. So I just want to be clear. This statement, if it was to go forward, would only go into effect if the state returned the land back to the original towns. Again, this was a draft for discussion only. The rest of the article's purpose is to also look at rezoning Vicksburg to include housing, and that's so it's an innovative, and what is it again?
Innovation and design.
Right. So right.
Technology. Yeah.
So in the last couple of months, I've heard that Vicksburg Square is 20 acres. Last week it was 83 acres, and then I read that Senator Cronin was quoted as saying it's 92 acres. So I don't even know how big it is, to be honest with you. Okay. Now, the idea of the draft article is that the committee would draft an article with the consensus of the stakeholders of like, okay, we think we know what we want and this is what we want to go forward. And then go to mass development and say, okay, here's our idea, we're all behind this, and now you need to do your job and to get mass development back to the table. That is the purpose. The whole, Ayer taking over Vicksburg Square, that statement I don't think is going to stay. It won't stay on the draft article. Okay, it's problematic because the other problem is that it's in two counties. Mm-hmm. So the concern is how do you everybody's like gerrymandering. Well, the problem is that in 2033 some gerrymandering is going to have it. Because something is going to have to break. Because, example, if Devon's was to become its own town, which according to the Harvard Press is not a good idea, what county is it going to be in? So so that's why I said the one thing I can tell everyone for sure is in 2033 there's going to be a change. And it won't be instantaneous because then there would have to be a rollout, okay? So that is what the hope. Now, what's interesting is that I guess Senator Cronin was at the Harvard meeting last week. I read it in the Harvard Press with Meg Delory from Mass Development. Senator Eldridge and Representative Senna were unable to attend that meeting. And he has now indicated that Vicksburg Square is not feasible. The idea being is that because of the governor's order with the emergency housing crisis, it would take a long time to fix. Now, irony, if this had been in his jurisdiction, he would have already known that. So I'm a little disturbed that he's really kind of encroaching, and I think it's important to everyone to remember that, unless you're a Shirley voter, whatever he's promising, you know, he's not going to deliver because he doesn't have to, because you're never going to be voting for him. His name is not on the ballot for Ayer voters or the ballot for Harvard voters. Jamie Eldridge is. So, you know, both of them kind of need to be a part of this conversation. So, but it does look like, you know, he's kind of backing off because, as we all know, Vicksburg Square, if to be fixed, it has some issues. It's old. It's about 100 years old. Now, I have had some engineers, not structural engineers, who have not been into the building, try to tell us that it's sound. I've been told concrete lasts about 100, is, you know, good for about 100 years, so it's there. It's at that threshold. But I don't think that anyone should be talking about the condition of that building until they've actually gone in and done structural engineering. But we do know there's going to be asbestos in there. There's probably lead paint in there. You know, so there are a lot of issues. And here's the funny part. I find this kind of funny because it's on the National Register of Historic Places. So we put these buildings on these registers and then we just walk away. But we put all these requirements on, well, if you buy that property, if you want to work on that property, you got to do all this, but yet we let this sit for a long time. So it is with hope that sometime, hopefully within the next 12 months, maybe sooner, that there will be a super town meeting regarding Vicksburg Square to rezone it for housing and whatnot, and that everyone will go in a little bit more open-minded than they had been in the past, and that we get this approved so that maybe a developer will come in and we can get that moving forward. Okay. So again, he's backing off from Vicksburg Square. We'll continue to kind of just keep our eye on it while also working the other lane of the RFI and when proposals come in and get that all done. And the next scheduled meeting for the DJFC is January 10th, 2024 at 3 p.m. here in Ayer. And I think that covers it.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions, Sean?
Nope, thanks, Jen.
Okay. So I do head up the Devon's Resolution Committee, which is on the local level for the town. So we are starting to, we've had a few meetings. We'll be working in coordination with Janice with the regional committee. We're going to start meeting with department heads and kind of look at impacts of services going into February, I think is our next scheduled meeting. And then once we get through those, we'll start, you know, we have other things that we're looking at. I'm hoping we can get most of our work done within the next 12 months ourselves. You know, at least feed you some information or even ask you questions for further information from the regional committee that can help us out. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Mm-hmm. All right. Final item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes. We have two. November 21st and December 5th. I did give them a quick read, did not see anything that popped out.
I had no issues? No?
Sorry. I didn't have any changes.
No issues, okay.
Okay.
So I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from, the board approved the meeting minutes from November 21st, 2023 and December 5th, 2023 as presented in the packet.
Seconded?
All right. Roll call the vote. Mr. Copeland?
Aye.
Ms. Livingston?
Aye.
And chair says aye. Minutes are approved. Thank you. Anything else this evening?
One thing I would just like to say, no, this is a happy note, I just like to, you know, as I'm sure everyone else says, happy holidays to all our employees especially. And thank you for all your hard work that you've done.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. And with that, I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right. Roll call the vote. Ms. Livingston?
Aye.
Mr. Copeland?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. We are adjourned. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas.